Hello and welcome to the Tales from the Soggy Side podcast. My name is Connor and I will be your host, and I'm joined here by my pals to talk about Wisconsin wetlands.
Hello, my name is Greg. I'll be your first co-host.
Hello, my name is Bradley. I'll be your second co-host.
So before we get into our discussion, how were your days?
Horrible.
Why?
I'm here, that's why.
Aren't you ready for the weekend, buddy?
No,
What are you doing this weekend?
because after the weekend is school.
Yeah, but you get the weekend first.
Yeah.
But then we get school second.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but
Monday
next week we also have an early release day. This is our last full week of school.
That's true. This is actually the last normal Friday that we're going to have for the rest of the year.
Okay, now it's looking pretty nice.
So, how was your Bradley?
My day's going fine. I'm ready for the weekend. Gotta go to
Me
my mom's
too.
graduation tomorrow for her college, so.
Don't have to do that, but I am excited for the weekend.
Yeah. Just excited to rest, relax. Don't have to work.
Alright.
I have to
tonight.
work.
Oh.
L?
Yeah, that kind of sucks. Okay, well, that's I guess that is enough of our little chat because you guys
Banter segment.
you guys are
I mean, how are you doing today?
buzzkills.
How are you doing
Oh,
today?
you want to know how I'm doing first? Okay.
Yeah. You never said that.
I'm actually doing pretty good. You know, I'm looking forward to the fact that I'm not gonna have a normal Friday for the rest of the year. Now that we know how everyone's doing, we can get into our actual discussion, and Bradley's gonna start us off, telling us a little bit about what wetlands are and why we need them.
Wetlands are a distinct ecosystem that is flooded and saturated by water, either permanently for years or decades or seasonally for a shorter period. 50% of Wisconsin's wetlands has been lost since the 1800s.
So you say we lost 50%, but how much is that actually?
We still have about 5 million acres remaining in the wetlands.
So we lost 5 million out of what, 10? total?
Yeah, of basically 10.
That is really a shame. And how did that come?
Urbanization.
Yeah, it's us. We're the problem.
Yeah. As usual.
Well,
Yeah.
let's think of something
America.
positive. What natural benefits do they provide?
Yeah.
Flood control, clean drinking water, and then there are also habitats for fish and wildlife like beavers and stuff.
Yeah. What other kind of stuff like would live in a Wisconsin wetland?
Muskies, waterfowl, cranes, songbirds, turtles, frogs.
So yeah, a lot of like birds. There's
Yeah.
fish and like reptiles.
Don't
Yeah.
forget about the insects.
Yeah,
That's true.
insects do.
Insects do love wetlands.
Yeah.
That's true. A lot of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
There.
I hate mosquitoes.
No one likes mosquitoes.
They provide nothing but food.
So that helps animals.
Yeah,
How does
so
it
it
help
helps-
us?
Like it just helps with kind of flood control for us, and then it provides us clean drinking water, like I've said before.
Right, and,
So-
and it's also like it's a nice place to go.
Yeah, it's a
hike,
nice-
see nature.
Yeah.
Don't forget about hunting.
That's your hunting.
Yeah,
Because
hunting.
since there's all those animals that live there,
Yeah.
hunting would be pretty nice there.
Wetlands provide all these great benefits, but sadly we are losing them at kind of a fast rate.
How fast?
Well, seeing as how we lost 50% of them, that's pretty fast if you ask me. The biggest threats in Wisconsin wetlands are flooding and damaged infrastructure. That's followed up by algae blooms, erosion, habitat loss of the great animals that we need, agricultural runoff, sediment deposition, and changes in groundwater levels.
So how much damage is really caused by this, and what's causing infrastructure damage exactly?
The infrastructure damage is a little bit of erosion, but mainly flooding. And the damage, it's around $114 million in damage from 2015 to 2019 alone.
It's probably more now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a few years.
In this economy.
Economy. That's a different topic. Well,
Not our topic.
Yeah, and the problem
now.
is that the reason why problems are flooding right now is because, well, the increased rainfall and snowmelt from all the
Right,
weather
right here.
changing and everything.
Yeah.
Climate change ties
Climate
into
change,
it, as it ties into everything.
Yep.
So, infrastructure damage is pretty major.
Yes, it really is. It's,
So
it's a huge nuisance to
So it's kind of
us.
an interesting idea. It's damaging infrastructure that we built to get rid of wetlands. So to fix damaging infrastructure, we need to get rid of infrastructure to put the wetlands back.
Yeah, we caused our own problem.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting look at that.
Good job, humans.
So yeah, if you guys are looking for a benefit for wetlands, well, there's a big one right there. You don't
Yeah.
want your house floating away, do you?
That's true. If
Yeah,
you, if you
yeah.
so that yeah, if you live near a wetland, maybe respect it a little bit. And that's what we can talk about right now. Is ways that we can address these threats that you were just talking about. A big thing that you can do is definitely just respecting wetlands on your property if you have them, and encouraging the local government to also respect wetlands and not allow development projects on them. And it's also important to prevent runoff, because runoff is how it gets out into the wetlands, causes more flooding. And a really important way that you can prevent runoff is by planting native plants, making like a rain garden at your home near your gutters where it runs off, and that way that rainwater will stay in your yard where it was supposed to be, instead of going into the street where it'll end up in the sewers and often wetlands.
Yeah. Those little plants can actually help with purifying the waters too.
That's true. They can provide some natural filtration there. It's also important just to keep your sidewalk and your driveways clean, because if you have all that dirt and that waste building up there, the runoff will also bring that with it, and that'll also cause some additional harm.
Yeah, and since floodings occur, it's just going to drag that all in.
Yes, and drag it all with it, and there's just going to be all sorts of problems and mess.
Yeah, I live like right by a sewer drain, and like you can see like lots of leaves and stuff just from getting pushed down by the water, just getting
like one of those
clogged.
big grates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you see on the side of the road.
Luckily, I live uphill.
Okay, that's good too. All right,
Good for you.
So while it may sound like we know a lot about what we're talking about, we're not professionals and we don't have the first-hand experience with wetlands that some people do. So we're going on to the next segment where we have a man named Bruce Ross who's going to be speaking with us. He works for a local organization called the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about wetlands, what we can do to address our threats with them, and here he is.
Hello, we have a special guest here today that's going to join us on the podcast here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Bruce Ross. I'm the executive director of the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, and glad to be with you and your audience today.
So how was your day today?
It's great so far. I live on the Milwaukee River. I'm looking at a somewhat flooded river swim by, and the sun is out. It's a Friday. Life is good.
What is like your role in the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association?
As I said, I'm the executive officer or the executive director of WWA. That's the guy who or the gal who's in charge of the overall organization. So we have a very small staff. We have a bunch of volunteers, and I help make sure that all of them, the staff and volunteers, are working towards things that are important to our organization. You know, we've been around for 40 years, and for those 40 years, we've been doing three things. One is that we do habitat restoration. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. Wetlands, primarily wetlands restoration and conservation, because that's important to waterfowl. Also important to waterfowl are bringing aboard the next generation. So I'm a couple of generations older than you all, but it's important for the heritage of waterfowling and for the good work that waterfowl hunters do in conservation and in the natural space to bring aboard that next generation. So we educate, we help turn wannabe hunters into waterfowl hunters, and then we help them progress from a harvesting of waterfowl, from a harvester all the way up to a passionate conservationist. And that's a natural progression that, as I said, almost everybody seems to take if you stay in it long enough. And we educate all the way along that arc. I call it the waterfowler's arc. And then thirdly, because we think waterfowlers do more than they take from the environment. We bring more to the table in terms of our conservation effort and the funding that we throw at that and the personal energy we throw at that. We think that waterfowler or duck hunter perspectives should be represented in the policies that are being made in Madison. And so we represent the voice of the waterfowler with the DNR and with legislators.
So how long have you been working for?
I joined Wisconsin Waterfowl Association about 5.5 years ago. I had been doing volunteer work before that with Ducks Unlimited, a similar organization. And before that, I was in the private sector. I worked in business. And even before that, I worked in the Coast Guard. I was 28 years service with the Coast Guard, really all around the country and really all around the world.
So you hunt waterfowl yourself too?
I do. I started about the same time that my organization that I now lead, about 40 years ago. My family were not hunters. However, a good friend of mine in college was, and he introduced me to grouse hunting, and that became waterfowl hunting. And as I moved around the Coast Guard, I really enjoyed the idea of connecting to both water and the marshes that I tended to hunt in. You may not be coffee drinkers, but the best place to have a cup of coffee is in a marsh as the sun is breaking to the east and the marsh comes alive. And so that kind of hooked me. The harvest is less important to me than the experience. And then ultimately, that experience is so important to me that I want to make sure that it's around for the next generation. So that brought me to the passionate conservationist.
That's nice. I've never actually done any hunting myself, but that does sound like it would be an interesting thing to do for like conservation.
Well, it has a lot of appeal. You guys, as I said, are in a different generation by a couple removed, and that number of hunters in Wisconsin, the percentage of Wisconsin hunters is shrinking as a percentage of overall population. So the good things, again, that hunters do, that's going to shrink with that shrinking population. So maybe we can get you guys interested in some waterfowling. We have some learn to hunt opportunities that we could talk about, but maybe after the show.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That's something we could do together. And any viewers listening this in, can check out the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association and get out there and try it yourself as well.
Yeah, if they're interested in that, they should check out our website. It's a really old, clunky website. Maybe there's some people in your listening audience who can help us update it. But the website is wisducks, WISDUCKS.org. So we're a nonprofit, so that .org is at the end.
So, what are like some larger projects that you and your organization have done, and how like successful were they?
Well, a lot of our projects happen on private lands and they tend to be smaller. So in the last 40 years, we've done well over 450 projects, over 10 a year. And they range from 5 acres in size to 150 acres in size. A lot of them, as I said, are done on private lands. So I don't want to necessarily advertise where those are at. But why do we do it on private lands might be a natural question. And the reason is that, of course, we at the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association are interested in promoting waterfowl conservation. It seems a little counterintuitive to hunt them and then also be interested in preserving and conserving them as a species, but they're compatible. We can go into those details if you like. But Wisconsin is a producer of ducks, meaning that it's a breeding and nesting area. So a lot of the land that's in Wisconsin, particularly the wetlands that are important to waterfowl, are in private hands. So 75% of the wetlands in Wisconsin are held privately. So private landowners are responsible for them. So we want to encourage them to take care of the wetlands that they have, which is good for their surrounding communities, but it's also good for waterfowl. So we've done over 450 projects in those 40 years, over 7,000 acres of wetlands restored, and that's just in the private land side. We can talk a little bit too about the new initiative, which may have brought us into connection, which is our public lands program. We are working alongside over the past year in an agreement with the Department of Natural Resources to look at their 1.4 million acres of land that they own. So not private lands, public lands, lands that you and I can go walk out on and hunt or fish or just traipse around if we want. And so we're looking at that property for restoration opportunities similar to what I just described on private lands. So we're looking for areas that maybe have been impacted by unnatural drainage features, like ditches or something called drain tiles, which help dry out a land, and it was intended for turning that land into agriculturally useful property. But it's always certain types of land, even if you try to drain it, never becomes productive agricultural land. So we're trying to remove those impairments or those ditches and the drains so that we can keep the wet back on the land and allow those soils to become moister and function as they did before agricultural producers attempted to try to turn it into agricultural land.
I do believe that initiative was how we originally found you with the whole public lands thing.
Yeah, and we just started that a year ago, and we wanted to celebrate 1 year, so we put out some press releases to make sure people were aware of that. And one of the reasons we did that was so that they can help us. If some of your listeners on private lands have impaired wetlands like I just described, go to that website we talked about, wisducks.org, and let us know about it. Click on the habitat tab and tell us about it. Likewise, if you're aware of potential projects, wetlands that we could potentially restore on the DNR properties that you may wander around, we wanted them to know that we're involved in this and that they could help us by helping direct us to areas they thought could be.
What benefits do wetlands provide to people every day?
Well, I've described that they're important to waterfowl. Water is in their name, so they are in and around. They need to breed in and around water, and their life cycle happens in those marshes and wetlands. And for people, we all enjoy that wildlife that we see. It's not just ducks, but deer and other critters really benefit. Turkeys and pheasants and otters and other critters benefit from wetlands, and people benefit from those critters. But in addition, wetlands provide a service for a community, or a number of services for a community. So, for example, wetlands retain water. So when like just the other night, it rained very heavily. We had almost 2 inches of rain here where I'm at, and probably pretty close to that where you're at. Your streams filled up. They got muddy. They got swollen. They were carrying soil from fields. That water that flashed through those fields, they were carrying it through those ditches to the streams, from the streams to the rivers. They were carrying it downriver. They were transporting that soil from where it was providing a useful service for that community, a useful function for that community, and are depositing it downstream where it just tends to create problems. That's not only dirty water, but it's carrying with it the nitrogen that might have been put, or the phosphorus that might have been put on an agricultural field to help produce or stimulate growth. Wetlands help retain those, not only the water, but the things that are in the water, the sedimentation and the chemicals, and they retain it locally so that it's not in the water that's going by our houses, or that we're swimming in, or that we're drawing our drinking water from out in the lake. So that's a benefit. Wetlands, as part of that retention of water, also help reduce the levels of flooding. So think of it as a sponge. If you pour water into a sponge, it'll hold it for a longer period of time, and that's great not only for the critters and the vegetation and the other things that need that water in that location, but it keeps it from running downstream and creating flooding situations, washing out bridges, washing out ditches and things like that, culverts that then have to be repaired at some considerable expense. So maybe you've seen with some of the rain events we've had, some of that damage that is caused by flooding, and wetlands help prevent that just by they're nature's sponge.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems with wetlands right now, if we don't maintain them, one of the biggest problems in Wisconsin is actually just flooding in general.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we're working with legislators and others to try to address that naturally. You can dig bigger holes, like in Milwaukee, they have the Metropolitan Sewerage District that tries to retain water in huge underground caverns when it floods, or you can upstream protect, preserve, conserve the wetlands that will retain that water upstream, so it's not doesn't have to be consolidated downstream to prevent discharges out into the lake. So yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct that if we're losing wetlands, then we're creating more flooding situations, or the likelihood of greater flooding situations. Climate change too, just a slightly different subject, somewhat related. That if we continue to put so much carbon up into the air, then that's not good for a whole host of reasons. And wetlands do something called carbon sequestration. So they hold within them that carbon rather than release it to the atmosphere. It holds carbon inside the soils and the plant life of that wetland, much like trees and other natural vegetation does, and that's helpful to help reduce the impacts of climate change.
So, what would you say are some things that people could do at home or just maybe lifestyle adjustments that would help protect wetlands and stop them from damaging them?
Well, great question, because we should think globally, but act locally, right? So, thinking about the things that people could do at home, uh, rain gardens are great. Create your own little wetland with a rain garden. You've heard about rain barrels. You keep rain from flooding through your gutters and down onto your lawn and out between the neighbor's yard and you. If you can keep it on your land, where it was originally intended to be, then you're doing less damage downstream. So those are some things. You think about a house. The sitting on land used to be the soil where that land is absorbed that water. Now it just runs off your house, and it consolidates into larger quantities of water in those ditches or in those swales between your houses, and that runs downstream. The faster that happens, the worse it is for the people downstream. So if you can keep it on that water on your land, the better off you're going to be.
Absolutely. We actually did think about making a rain garden for a project here, but we ended up choosing this instead.
Yeah, it's better to
Okay.
spread some awareness about it instead of just a small group doing a small thing. If everyone can do a small thing, it would be a lot more impactful.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I call that the leverage point. Where do you find the point of maximum impact for what you personally can do? And that's why I like this organization. That's why I like my role in this organization. Rather than me going out and working in a marsh, to remove invasive species or to help restore that marsh, I can work at a higher leverage point to help enable folks like you to spread that word. That's hopefully going to get more people thinking about it and doing things like this.
How can people help the WWA?
Well, we are a membership organization, and that means that the membership helps fund the organization to do the things it does. They could join WWA. Again, go into that website, wisducks.org, and click on membership and become a member. And that will get you a newsletter that tells you not only about wetlands and the work we're doing in wetlands, like we've talked about, but it helps you learn about the biology of waterfowl, or what's happening in the duck hunting world, or what's happening in the natural world. And the newsletter comes to your box every day. We have great events as well, and that'll help keep you informed about them. If you're a golfer or a hunter, we talked about learning to hunt earlier. We have those activities as well. So I would encourage folks who might have an interest in exploring this a little bit further to check out our website, maybe become a member. And certainly, one of the things about WWA is that we're small. And as a result, we don't have a big staff, a paid professional staff, but we have a lot of really interested, committed volunteers. So we are very good at taking a person's passion and their energy and allowing them to find and use that passion in support of things that are important to both the individual and to Wisconsin Waterfowl Association. So that's another opportunity. Well, I've enjoyed talking with you all, and if you have more questions, I'd be glad to sit down and talk with you, or you can email me some. Do you want any pictures or anything to go along with this to help you put it out? I'd be glad to, and I'll send you a link to our website so that you can rummage around in there too, and maybe you find some pictures that you'd be interested in grabbing off that.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for speaking with us and taking time out of your life to explain the situation.
No worries, Bradley, Greg, Connor. Thank you so much for your interest in this topic.
Absolutely, and anyone listening in, go volunteer with them. Do some real work.
Again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for doing all the work that you do. Hopefully that this has convinced at least some people to maybe reconsider a bit of their lifestyle, just to help just a little bit, even just a little bit is good enough.
Absolutely.
Small changes end up being big overall over a long period of time. So thank you guys for taking an interest. You have a great day, have a great weekend, and let me know how I can help you guys carry this message forward.
Yep.
Thank you too.
You
It's
too.
nice meeting you.
You bet. Take care. Bye.
That was Bruce Ross from the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association.
Yeah, we'd like to say thanks once again to Bruce for talking with us.
And make sure you check out the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association at wisducks.org. That is WISDUCKS.org.
That was a really nice interview. I think we learned a lot, so let's talk a little bit about it. So what kind of things did you learn, Greg?
Well, I didn't learn much, as he addressed again that the biggest problem is flooding, and he also proposed great solutions to that.
Right, he did propose a lot of solutions. I think it's important that we emphasize the usage of rain barrels and rain gardens, which he touched on. We did also touch on that at the start, but it's good to reiterate. And I think it's also important for people to get out there, volunteer for organizations such as the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, and just go do some work.
You don't even need to do that. You can just do simple things at home, too.
You can do things at home like the rain garden we said, but it's nice to get out there and help organizations as well.
By maintaining wetlands, it helps provide homes for waterfowl, and by maintaining waterfowl, it helps provide hunting to help the organization.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also other hunters that just want to hunt for when it's season.
Yeah, just like sport hunting, not related to any organization. Yeah, that's true. I guess that's it. We think we're pretty good on knowledge. We got everything down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to the Tales from the Soggy Side podcast. I think we all learned a lot about Wisconsin wetlands. This has been your host, Connor.
And this is your first co-host, Greg.
This is your second co-host, Bradley.
So thank you for listening, and make sure you check out the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association. Hang out with Bruce, do some hunting, and help out.
And have an amazing day!
Make good choices.